Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down a truly fascinating first-hand account from former Democratic Socialist of America organizer Jake Alman. In a recent, super detailed interview, Alman completely peeled back the curtain. He detailed the internal mechanics of a modern political movement and how it has radically evolved over the last decade. Whether you're a total political junkie or just curious about how these grassroots movements actually function behind the scenes, this source material offers a pretty remarkable blueprint of modern political organization. To keep things totally impartial and give you the clearest picture possible, we're going to examine Alman's claims across 5 key areas. We'll look at the DSA's transformation, the shift in their demographics, their new tactics and platforms, the actual political machine they've built, and finally, the impact all of this has on American politics. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, the DSA transformation, we're looking at how they went from pragmatic roots to some pretty radical shifts.
Tracking Alman's own timeline, it's pretty wild. He says he joined back in 2013 because, well, it was a pragmatic, moderate group. They were focused on bread-and-butter union issues and traditional social democracy. But look how fast things shift. By 2014, a radical left caucus forms internally. Skip ahead to 2017, and Alman claims the old guard union organizers were actively getting pushed out. And this really culminated in some intense foreign policy stances that alienated the older members, like a 2018 statement defending the Maduro regime in Venezuela and a 2022 statement blaming the West and NATO for the invasion of Ukraine. For Alman, that 2022 statement was literally the final straw that made him leave.
And this illustrates the ideological chasm perfectly. It's like a night and day difference. In the past, you had pragmatic social democrats focused on labor. They were open to diverse viewpoints, including Zionism, and historically, they maintained a strong anti-communist sentiment. But the new cadre today, Alman describes them as explicitly revolutionary. They support extreme foreign regimes, they're aggressively hostile to any anti-communist sentiment, and, according to him, they rely heavily on mob tactics to silence any internal dissent. It's a complete 180-degree turn in their culture.
Moving to Section 2, a shift in demographics, specifically the influx of youth and what Alman calls the downwardly mobile elite.
Just look at this massive drop. Alman points out that in 2013, the median age of a DSA member was essentially retirement age, 68 years old. But then, right after Bernie Sanders' presidential run, that median age was cut in half, dropping all the way down to just 33 by 2018. That is an astonishingly fast demographic turnover for any organization. In fact, by 2021, 3 in every 4 members were younger than 40. Alman traces this sudden youth wave straight back to academia and highly educated progressive spaces where these more radical ideas were germinating. Basically, the old guard literally aged out, or they were just pushed out by this massive wave of young activists. Alman actually has a name for this new demographic. He calls them the downwardly mobile elite. So who are they? Well, these are highly educated, culturally affluent people, we're talking Ivy League grads, who feel deeply politically disenfranchised. Why? Because even though they're doing okay compared to the average American, they feel they just can't hit the traditional economic milestones their parents did, like easily buying a house right out of college. Alman argues the DSA gives this group 2 huge things: a powerful vehicle for their political grievances, and a tightly knit, almost secular religious community that promises to build a brand new world. Now, here's where it gets really interesting regarding how the DSA works internally. Alman says there's a strict division between what they call paper members and the cadre. Paper members? Those are your casual donors. Think mainstream progressives who just swipe their credit card and go about their day. But the cadre? They are the hardcore, deeply ideological activists. They attend every single meeting, they do all the grueling organizational work, and ultimately, they dictate the extreme agenda. Alman's main point here is that it's this radical cadre driving the ship, totally unchecked by the casual paper members.
So, what does this new cadre actually want? Let's hit Section 3, new tactics and platforms, revolution and extreme policy.
According to our source material, the current DSA platform is pushing demands that would probably leave the average voter speechless. We're talking about defunding the Department of Defense and, get this, entirely replacing the president and Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by Congress. They're also demanding the prosecution of U.S. and Israeli leaders and an end to economic pressure on regimes like Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran. I mean, sure, they also want a 32-hour work week, which might sound pretty nice to a lot of people, but it's bundled with policies that would fundamentally rewrite the entire American governmental structure. And to stay totally objective here, we really have to look at Alman's exact framing. He explicitly warns, and I quote, "They are explicitly revolutionaries. They want to pull down our government institutions and our economic order, and they believe they can build something better in its place." He is putting it right out there. Their stated goal isn't just to tweak or reform the system. They want to dismantle the whole shebang. He backs this up with the organization's own internal data, too. Alman points out that in a 2021 member survey, a whopping 36% openly identified as communists. And he's pretty confident that number has only shot up since then. It really goes to show that this revolutionary rhetoric, it's not just big talk. It is a core identity for a massive chunk of their active members. But how on earth does a group with views this far outside the mainstream actually win elections? That brings us to Section 4, the DSA political machine. We're talking serious infrastructure and media discipline. Alman explains that the DSA doesn't just coast on big ideas. They run a relentlessly well-oiled political machine. Let's look at their playbook. First, they target very specific, highly winnable primary races. Second, they deploy that hardcore cadre we talked about, volunteers who are more than willing to do the exhausting door-to-door grinding that moderate campaigns usually struggle with. Third, they enforce razor-sharp private sector-level media discipline. Alman actually points to the incredibly high production value of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's very first campaign ad as a prime example of this. And fourth, they ruthlessly silence dissent. They use coordinated online swarms and mob tactics to smear critics, which makes it absolutely toxic for anyone to try and oppose them publicly. So why does this playbook work so well? Well, Alman argues they just steamroll traditional Democrats because the establishment is, frankly, hollowed out. He puts it bluntly. The Democratic Party is a shell, the unions are a shell of their former selves, and everyone is just going to fall in line. Basically, the traditional center just lacks the highly motivated grassroots troops to fight back at the neighborhood level, so the establishment just folds. Which leads us to our final part, Section 5. Impact on American politics. How this mainstreams the fringe and shapes future elections. Alman points to a total realignment of political coalitions, using recent primary results in Michigan to really drive this home. Look at the shift here. On one side, you have the old, traditional Democratic coalition, working class, rural, and black voters focused on moderate, pragmatic union policies. But on the flip side, you have the new coalition backing these DSA-aligned candidates, young, highly affluent, suburban, and college-educated voters driving a hard-left progressive populism. Alman's big warning is that by leaning into this affluent demographic, the party risks completely abandoning its traditional working-class base, pushing them right out the door. Now, you might be wondering, why don't mainstream, moderate politicians just stand up and push back? Alman's answer is chillingly straightforward. They are terrified. Mainstream politicians are adopting a go-along-to-get-along strategy. Basically, out of fear of those aggressive mob tactics we just talked about, and this desperate need to project unity for the midterms, they choose the easy route. They look the other way, and in doing so, they inadvertently give political cover to the extremes. And that brings Alman to a pretty stark prediction about our deeply polarized future. He suggests that if this trend keeps up, this mix of establishment weakness and highly organized radicalism, we're heading straight into horseshoe theory territory. As he puts it, we might soon face a situation where our only choices on the ballot are Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or J.D. Vance, the absolute furthest poles of the left and the right, completely squeezing out the pragmatic center. Ultimately, this explainer leaves us with a massive question as we look toward future election cycles. How will mainstream political parties navigate these highly organized, radicalized factions within their own ranks? Can the traditional center rebuild its grassroots infrastructure in time to hold its ground? Or are these disciplined ideological machines just going to completely dictate the future of American politics? It's a fascinating puzzle and definitely something we're all going to have to keep a very close eye on.